Hi everyone, welcome to the Genomic Wellness and Glutathione Awareness webinar. Thank you for joining us tonight. For those of you that don't know me, I am Jacqui. I am a health coach, a glutathione advocate, and 1/3 of the Glutathione Girls. Tonight joining me is women's health advocate, awarded women's health advocate, Karen Livingstone, and genomic wellness practitioner, Sue Barron. I hope you enjoyed the webinar tonight, and I'll pass on to Karen. At the end, we'll be able to do some questions. So I'll let Karen take over, and there you go. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you, Jacqui. Hi, everybody, and thank you for joining us tonight. I want to, the reason that I'm here tonight is I would like to talk to you a little bit about my life. My mother actually had ovarian cancer. She was diagnosed after experiencing symptoms that were quite benign. She was told to go home and to eat more fibre. She did that, however, things didn't improve. So she actually kept going back to a doctor and was subsequently discovered to have advanced stage ovarian cancer. What we didn't know is that it ran in families, and in fact my aunt, her sister, her older sister, had actually already been diagnosed with ovarian cancer some 5 years earlier. So with my mum, she undertook treatment. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. My mother survived 2 years and 10 months with her diagnosis of ovarian cancer. Her sister, consequently, or conversely, actually survived 10 years and 11 months with the diagnosis of ovarian cancer. We were quite aghast that our mother had been diagnosed with ovarian cancer, because Mum had always told us she'd actually undertaken a hysterectomy and always believed that everything had been taken care of. What we didn't know at the time was her ovaries had actually been left behind so that she could experience a natural menopause. So myself and my sister and 3 other people actually joined forces, and we co-founded Ovarian Cancer Australia as a consumer organisation that was looking after the support of women who were diagnosed with ovarian cancer, the awareness of the signs and symptoms of ovarian cancer, and also advocacy on behalf of women with ovarian cancer. I went on to run the organisation for a period of time and was an active director of the organisation. My lifestyle was quite hectic. I had 2 small children. When my mother died in the year 2001, my son was 20 months and my daughter was 4 years old. So I had young children, and I was trying to found an organisation. So my life was very much about following that path and enabling women to know more about ovarian cancer across Australia. My mother, in her wisdom, never believed that it was coincidence that her and her sister actually both had ovarian cancer, although the experts told us at the time that they thought, or they believed, it was about a 4% chance that 2 sisters could have a familial form of ovarian cancer. We now know that that's actually around about the 20% mark, and they're only of the genes that have been discovered in time. Myself and my sister were very passionate about driving awareness for ovarian cancer. My mum asked if she could put her blood away to be tested to see whether there was a genetic reason for her and her sister having the disease, which was quite ahead of the curve in terms of what we now know with DNA testing for this particular gene. My mother was found to have the BRCA2 gene, and I'm sure you may have heard of Angelina Jolie removing her breasts and also taking her ovaries out. That is also because she has the BRCA2 gene. And so it was really the first time that I had understood how genetics actually influences someone's diagnosis from a chronic illness. So I went on to run the organisation and to spread awareness, and we grew fairly strong into a national organisation, National Women's Health Organisation. And it was in 2009 that my husband, who was one of Australia's leading stand-up comics, who would fly around the country and actually perform in plane, flew around the country in planes, and also, to far-reaching areas to actually perform comedy. He was experiencing sore legs, to which I sent him to the doctors after he had undertaken a plane trip from Melbourne to Brisbane and thought that his chest was going to crack open, and then from Brisbane to Port Douglas to perform a comedy set, and then the next morning turn around and come back to Melbourne. It was discovered that he actually had DVTs in his legs, and we at first thought that perhaps that was because he was flying around the country, economy syndrome as it's known. What we found out very quickly is that he had a diagnosis of pancreatic cancer. Ovarian cancer is a 46% survival, pancreatic cancer is a 7% survival. So it's very rare to survive pancreatic cancer. My husband never did anything the traditional way, and he decided to undertake an alternative method of treatment for pancreatic cancer once he knew that conventionally he wouldn't survive. We were very fortunate that the comedy fraternity around the country actually raised a lot of money by doing 1,000-seater theatres. David was known as the godfather of Australian comedy, and it was extremely lucky that the comedy fraternity raised a lot of money to keep David and myself and the children going, as we didn't have income protection insurance. And it was David's choice that he wanted to go to Mexico, and he actually wanted to have alternative treatment in a clinic in Mexico. So we flew to Mexico. At the time, I was still running ovarian cancer, and I had also was sitting on a medical board for a national research, gynecological cancer research organisation. So we went to Mexico, and that was the first time I heard the word glutathione. And I knew from my studies and my research that glutathione was extremely important to quality of life and also for cellular health. And you'll learn a little bit more about that tonight. What we were given in Mexico was a powdered form of glutathione. And what I didn't know then, that I do know now, is that that form of glutathione is not as effective getting into our cells to lift the body's production of glutathione, which is what we need to happen. My husband was quite diligent in taking the glutathione supplement because he believed it could help. Following his diagnosis, David passed away after a 10-month battle with pancreatic cancer. And it was about a month later that my best friend, who is sitting here beside me, and helped me nurse David through the journey and his diagnosis. We were walking on the beach. She said to me, "What do you know about glutathione? I know I've heard you speak about it." And I said, "Well, actually, I know a lot about glutathione," which started the journey that we're on. But what I haven't told you is 4 months prior to David's diagnosis with pancreatic cancer in 2009, I was conclusively diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. I had had my first instance in 2005 where I had what they told me was optic neuritis, which was a clouding of the eye, and it was actually very sore to any light whatsoever. They did tell me at the time that it is a precursor to multiple sclerosis, and it could progress or it may not progress. And in true fashion, I changed nothing about my life, and I continued working the candle at both ends and looking after my family, and running a national organisation, flying around the country and talking to groups of women. So a month after David dying and Sue talking to me about glutathione, I had already begun to have stress, and symptoms of my MS had flared up. And so I was really quite open to trying this glutathione supplement, or glutathione boosting supplement. I went on it, and I responded really, really well. And I'm happy to say that since 2005, I've progressed through my journey in life, and I haven't actually taken any pharmaceutical drugs for my MS. I've been able to manage it with glutathione and boosting my glutathione, but I also had the benefit of understanding my DNA. My DNA was tested, so I knew exactly how to target my supplementation to what my body was needing to actually help it through a healing journey. I live a very full life today, and I am extremely passionate about glutathione, and I'm extremely passionate about preventative health, and looking at ways in which we can live our best life. What you'll find here tonight is information. What you do with the information that we deliver to you is totally up to you. It is our hope that you will take it on board and that you will actually use it to benefit your life. And I'm going to pass you over to Sue Barron now, who is actually going to take you on a journey of discovery with DNA and glutathione. Thank you for joining us.
Okay. Thanks, Karen. You know, Karen, more than anyone, understands the significance of preventative health and trying to prevent disease rather than trying to backtrack and address a disease once you've already got it, because that's really hard. So I'm going to share with you now about a really important test, the Smart DNA Genomic Wellness Test, which actually has just been upgraded, and it used to be 100 different gene SNPs. It's now 167 gene SNPs. So, and people that have done their test prior can actually do an upgrade. They don't actually have to do the full test again. So I'm going to explain a little bit more about DNA, and you know, you've heard the term, it's not one size fits all, and we are all different, we are all unique. And you know, you'll look at families when there's health problems that run in families, and you think, oh yeah, that's hereditary or genetic. And yes, different families have different tendencies towards maybe succumbing to certain diseases, but it doesn't actually mean that they have to actually succumb to that disease. And so prevention is really important, and what we want to do is actually prevent what's causing the disease in the first place. And that's something I will talk about more, which is oxidative stress, but also deficiencies in certain nutrients and things. So if we can be functioning at the best we can, you know, and if we understand how our body works so that we can function at the best we can, then we can live a really healthy life, hopefully, and enjoy optimal health. So it's not one size fits all. I love this saying, genetics loads the gun, but the environment pulls the trigger. You know, genetics, that's nature. We can't change our genetics. What we've inherited from our parents, you know, we've inherited those genes from our parents. But what we can do is change the environment that we live in, or change our lifestyle. And it's how our lifestyle interacts with our genetics that's actually the most important. It's not the genetics solely on their own, it's the lifestyle. When we're talking about nutritional genomics, that is, it's the lifestyle and how it interacts with those genes. So that's nurture. Nutritional genomics is the combined effect of genes and nutrition, and nutrition is so critically important. It's the largest environmental factor affecting our health. So we've got to get that right. You know, some of us are more prone to being deficient in certain nutrients, and if we can address that and have our pathways working better, we're going to enjoy a healthier lifestyle. So you can have pretty, you know, you can actually have pretty awful DNA, but you can actually be really healthy because you understand the areas that need to be targeted. And I think that's really important to understand. You know, when we look at the Smart DNA test, and as I said, it's just been updated, and there are some other, some new panels that have been introduced. So we look at, I'm going to go through the different panels that we look at, and we look at, the first panel we look at is lipid metabolism. This is your heart health, and you will have heard of different people. Some people are prone to higher cholesterol, some people are more prone to heart disease than others. There's different reasons why, and generally, as I said, it's genetics, but it's also your environment. So if we can understand our genetics and our susceptibility here, we can actually understand what's right for us, because what's right for me is not necessarily right for Karen, and I absolutely know that when it comes to this first gene, ApoE. And you know, this is the gene that's really important at determining what type of diet is better suited to you for your heart health. It's the gene that it's the main gene that determines the diet that's suited to you. And for me, it's a more lower fat diet. My body doesn't metabolize saturated fat well, and those are the fats generally that come from animal sources like dairy and meat, that sort of thing. A little bit I can get away with, but my body doesn't metabolize it well. And even things like olive oil, that Mediterranean style diet, which for a long time has been kind of touted as the diet for everyone. Well, it's not the diet for everyone. Someone like me is very sensitive to oils oxidizing. So I'm part of that 28% that it's actually not suited. But I can enjoy very much a plant-based diet with a lot of nuts and seeds and even avocados and things like that, and some fish and some lean meat. That's okay. But I have to be a lot more vigilant with how much fat is in my diet. Whereas Karen can get away with, you know, she could drink a couple of tablespoons of olive oil and it would actually be really beneficial to her for her heart health. It's a bit more palatable with a bit of lemon juice in it, but or sprinkled over, you know, poured over a salad. Yeah, but things like that, it's really important to understand. And some of us are more prone to, you know, HDL is known as your good or protective cholesterol. That's the one that ideally we want to have at a high level, because it's going to help cut bad fats out of the bloodstream. So things like lipoprotein(a), which is a genetic risk factor for heart disease. And there's a portion of the population, about 12%, that actually do carry that gene. And we can determine who those people are in this DNA test. And if you've got high levels of HDL, well, that's one thing that's going to help, you know, remove those bad fats, like lipoprotein(a), and also, you know, LDLs, small dense LDLs as well, which are not so desirable, and triglycerides as well. So we can determine through this section what diet is better suited to us. We can be alerted if we have more of a tendency for heart disease. But it doesn't mean we're going to go down that route and get heart disease. It means we can put measures in place to actually prevent that from happening. And that's really, really, really valuable information. We look at a diabetes section panel, and you know, some of us are more prone to diabetes than others. So, you know, I think all of us, and from the hundreds of DNA reports I've been through, none of us get off scot-free. If we're going to eat, you know, consume large amounts of sugar or processed carbohydrates, no matter how good our DNA is, we're going to tip the balance there. But some people are actually extremely sensitive. So, you know, that's important information to understand that as well. We look at, there's a large inflammation panel. It used to be 3 genes. We're now looking at, I think it's about 8 or 9 different genes. And some of these genes are more associated with things like heart disease or age-related diseases. So, you know, and others are more, you know, acute inflammation. So we can actually, even things like arthritis, you know, we can determine whether if you were the type of person that pounded the pavements and did a lot of running in your youth, well, you're probably going to suffer when you get older. So the earlier in life that you understand that and can actually take measures to prevent that, it doesn't mean you can't run, but you would do it differently, or maybe, you know, have a very anti-inflammatory diet that's going to counteract that inflammation and maybe supplement towards that. But even knowing that that you're predisposed to arthritis, that's actually very important information, and you might change your sport to swimming or cycling or something like that. We also look at a lot of vitamins and how your body processes these vitamins. You know, some people, you know, coenzyme Q10 is one that's actually very protective against heart disease, and plus it's one of the antioxidant enzymes in our body that's helping prevent against oxidative damage. So, you know, but some people are prone to lower levels, and if they supplement, they need to be supplementing in the more activated form. There's no point going out and just taking straight CoQ10, because these people that are prone to being low in it can't actually convert CoQ10 into the more activated form. We look at things like how salt sensitive we are when it comes to blood pressure, and, you know, ideally most of us should be using, or all of us, if we're going to add salt to our diet, and salt is important to a degree, that that we use the, you know, a pink Himalayan sea salt, or one of the salts that's got the minerals in it. Omega-3s, omega-6s, well, you know, if someone's out there taking a lot of flaxseed thinking it's going to boost their omega-3s, and then, you know, we look at their DNA and they discover that they actually can't convert plant-based omegas very well into, they can't actually absorb them very well, then that's important information to know. These people need to be getting their omega-3s more from a fish source, or even an algae source, so green algae, or from grass-fed meat. So, you know, people can be wasting their money or taking the wrong types of vitamins or supplements that their body actually can't use. We look at a lot of the B vitamins, B2, B12, are we prone to lower levels? We look at vitamin C, vitamin E, are we prone to lower levels? And if we are, yep, we can address that through diet, maybe supplementation. One of the new ones that's come in is iron metabolism. Some of us are much more prone to lower iron levels. So, so this is actually one of the very new panels, and I think there's and I think that will interest a lot of people, because there's a lot of people out there that are actually prone to dropping their iron levels very quickly, and understanding why is really important. Clotting factors, factor 2, factor 5, once again, this is one of the new panels. So, you know, if you understand that you're more prone to clotting, you can take measures to protect against that. Methylation, another really important panel. You know, methylation, this pathway is probably one of the most important pathways in the body. It's critical for things like your thinking, for your DNA repair. We can't repair our DNA if this pathway is not working. For being able to switch our genes on and off, which is what we're trying to do here with nutritional genomics. Also for driving down inflammation, fighting infections. It's one of the major detoxification pathways. And also for protecting the coating on the nerves. And that's certainly something significant that was significant with Karen. You know, she found out later on when she did her DNA, yep, she was at risk of this pathway not working, and you know, probably this was a contributing factor for her, that this pathway wasn't working. And you know, and it's an easy fix if you understand these things. It's all about, you know, preventing disease happening in the first place. You know, this pathway is really important for a lot of different autoimmune conditions. A lot of people with even thyroid problems, but autoimmune conditions in general are often poor methylators, as well as people that are more prone to forming blood clots. That was me. I had a lot of miscarriages before I had my first child, and I would have been clotting off on my embryos because I was a poor methylator. So, you know, I got my answers later on. I wish I'd known that at the time. There was a lot of heartache that I went through when my friends were getting pregnant and going to term with their babies, and I lost 3 in a row, which, you know, I believe now needn't have actually happened. I discovered when I did my DNA that I was the worst case scenario really for this gene called MTHFR, which is one of the important methylation genes. So makes me much more prone to miscarriage. My obstetrician actually put me on aspirin, and I went to term with my daughter. It didn't address the underlying cause, I believe, knowing what I know now, but it actually was a band-aid and stopped me clotting off on these embryos. So, that's really important information to understand, a really important pathway. And you can address it with taking B vitamins in the correct form. So, people that have strokes as well, people that have strokes are often poor methylators. So it's a huge, and homocysteine is a blood marker that you can get tested through your GP, and it's a marker for how well that pathway is working. So, I will often say to people, well, I actually get all my clients to check their homocysteine level, because if you're not actually consuming these B vitamins, even if your DNA doesn't actually show that you have that you're susceptible, if you're not consuming enough B vitamins in your diet, this pathway is not going to be working well anyway. So, vitamin D metabolism, another area that's really important for autoimmune. And once again with Karen, it was her vitamin D level when they checked it was 26.
26.
Extremely low.
Extremely low.
So, normal today we say is around 100, 150. Some people say even higher. We want it to be over 100 absolutely anyway, and hers was 26. So that put her at huge risk of autoimmune, but it also puts people at huge risk. There's a lot of other diseases, and they're actually written here, things like diabetes, depression, reduced immunity, some cancers, as well as, rheumatoid arthritis, lupus, Crohn's, etc. So they've now started treating people with depression and anxiety with vitamin D. So as well as, that's another one with methylation. The two often go hand in hand. And when you're a poor methylator, as we saw before, if you take the activated Bs, and you absolutely need to be addressing the vitamin D as well. So both really, really important. We also look at lactose intolerance and celiac disease. It's, a lot of people find they have discomfort in their gut, and they haven't actually figured out that it's associated with maybe when they've been eating gluten or lactose. And I did have a client a few years ago that grew up on a dairy farm, and he was Italian, and he was living off pasta, pizza, and a lot of dairy products. All his life he'd been doing this. And when I said to him, something, you're actually lactose intolerant genetically, because you can induce lactose intolerance as a secondary intolerance from, often consuming a lot of antibiotics. But from a genetic perspective, he was lactose intolerant, and also he carried 2 of the celiac genes. So he shouldn't have been eating gluten as well. And so he stopped the lactose or the dairy, and he stopped eating gluten. And 2 weeks later, he said to me, I've got a flat stomach for the first time in my life. So, that was hugely significant for him to be able to address that and feel so much better. He just hadn't realised that what he was experiencing was actually abnormal. I think he thought everyone felt like that. And who's to know if you've been like that all your life. We also look at caffeine metabolism, why some people can tolerate caffeine and some can't. I certainly can't. 2 green teas is enough for me in a day. I can't drink coffee. I'll get palpitations. And I'd worked that one out before I did my DNA and realised that I was a slow caffeine metabolizer. But not everyone does, and caffeine, for someone who's a slow caffeine metabolizer, if you're consuming too much of it, can actually, cause you to have an arrhythmia or a heart attack from too much caffeine. We also look at a lot of genes associated with phase 1 detoxification and phase 2 detoxification, and these areas have also been expanded in the new genetic test. So, how well do we clear estrogen and xenoestrogens and pollutants and chemicals and things like this, heavy metals. So we can look at these, and that explains a lot of people why, some people are extremely sensitive to environmental toxins far more than others. And also, if you're missing some of these glutathione genes, you are actually much more at risk of things like cancers. But even other conditions like any chronic disease, pretty much, if you can't detoxify and clear those heavy metals and toxins, you are putting your body at risk. We look at a section on oxidative stress, and so we look at some of these antioxidant enzymes that your body actually produces. So superoxide dismutase, glutathione peroxidase, and catalase. These are 3 of the big ones here. They've added some more to the new genetic test as well. If your body produces these antioxidant enzymes in small amounts, if it's compromised here, you're going to be in trouble, especially if you're exposing yourself to a lot of environmental toxins or stress. You see runners, and unfortunately it was very sad. Last week, I think it was, there was a runner in the US she was an Olympic runner, and she died of cancer, and it was a 10-year battle with cancer. But when I heard that news, and she kept running throughout and competing throughout that 10 years, like she was a fighter. She did really well.
And she was an endurance athlete.
And she was an endurance athlete. She did really well to survive those 10 years. But something, she would have been doing damage to her body through all the training and the competing that she was doing. And so many athletes do not understand that. And, if she had looked at her DNA, I'm quite sure the answers would have been there for her. She would have seen that her body didn't have the ability to repair itself well, to neutralise free radicals. It didn't have these antioxidant enzymes working well, or maybe she was a poor methylator and had low levels of glutathione. All of these things combined, there's reasons why people get sick and why people get sick younger. And part of it's environment and part of it's genetics. So, and she would have been pushing her body to the extreme. And, athletes today, it concerns me that they are pushing their bodies to the extreme more so than they've ever been expected to do before. And we're all told that you shouldn't take supplements. Well, I'm sorry, if you are pushing your body like that, you actually need to give back to your body and replace those nutrients that you're prone to being low in, and give your body what it needs to help it repair itself. So we look at your susceptibility here. There's also a section on weight management, things like addiction comes in, and some of us are more prone to being addicted to, or even emotional eating, or being addicted to any form of addiction. And sometimes that can be things like exercise, but it can be also things like gambling, drugs, smoking. There's the addictions come in many forms, sugar. So we look at your susceptibility there. We look at how you process things like carbohydrates and protein, whether you benefit more from a higher protein diet. We look at it as a really important gene called the FTO gene, or the fatso gene. And when people carry 2 copies of this gene, they really usually don't get a signal going through to their brain to say, I'm full, I can stop eating now. Even some of the people that only carry one copy of this gene are more at risk of not knowing when they're full, not getting that satiety feeling and knowing when they can stop eating. So there's a lot of information in this section. It explains why a lot of people struggle to lose weight and why some people put on weight quicker than others do. So that can be hugely beneficial for people, giving them answers as to how they can manage their weight better. Physiogenomics, including things like depression, obesity, you know, we look at this. Are we more prone to depression? Are we more prone to anxiety? These sorts of things. Are we, you know, how do we cope with stress? Are we more prone to blanking out and losing our memory, forgetting our PIN numbers, forgetting our telephone numbers, or where we've parked the car? You know, there's a gene associated with that, and I have it. And yeah, and I've done it many times. But knowing I've got that, that was actually a bit of a relief, thinking, oh, phew, well, now I know why I function like that, and Karen doesn't, for instance. You know, social activity. Some people are more social than others, and some of us find we need our own space and can't tolerate being around people 24/7. And then we've got the social bunnies out there like Karen who thrive off being around people 24/7. So, you know, it explains a lot about how we function. And why some people are more prone to seasonal affective disorder. You know, it's winter now, and some people kind of fall in a heap and also don't like the cold. So, you know, I've had to rethink my exercise program. I don't like getting up first thing in the morning and going out for a run, thank you very much, when it's cold. So, you know, I'm doing other things now at different times of the day so that it's better for me. So we learn that information. We also have a section on sports and exercise, you know, whether you've got more fast or slow twitch muscle fibers, whether you're more prone to sprint, more endurance, or more a mixture of both, whether you have great VO2 max, whether you can cope at high altitudes well. And these pictures here of me last year being when I trekked the Himalayas, and you know, I managed to make it to the highest peak that we were going to. There were 8 of us on the trek, and 3 of us made it to the highest peak. I was very vigilant with my antioxidants. I was taking a lot of antioxidants because I had read a paper about high altitude making us more susceptible to free radical damage, and that antioxidants was so much more important to counteract that. So I took that on board, and I took high levels of antioxidants and managed to cope pretty well, I thought. Some of the others succumbed to altitude sickness and didn't cope as well. So yeah, and I knew I had a gene, and it's called the HIF1 gene, and it means that genetically I probably can cope better at high altitudes. Some people can't, and that was my husband, and I knew he had that gene, and I said to him, I don't think you're going to cope once you get up to high altitude very well. And he said, oh, don't worry, I'll be fine. Well, he got to about 4,800 meters and he started vomiting and the headaches set in, and he was determined not to let that happen. But you know, that was genetics for him, and he did actually struggle quite a lot, and he was trekking with oxygen saturation sitting around 60%, which if you were in a hospital situation, that would be code blue. So, you know, it wasn't really ideal. His oxygen saturation levels were a lot lower than everyone else. And we also look at how people recover. Some of us recover better than others after exercise. So there's quite a few more panels as well that have just been introduced, and the new test, the first lot of the new tests, which will be mine, comes out this week. So I'm quite excited to see to see that new information, and next time I'll be able to talk more about that. But that's pretty much the DNA in a nutshell. I want to go on now and talk more about a couple of areas that I feel are really important, and I believe are really, really important considering the age that we live in today, the modern age that we live in today. And this is glutathione and also oxidative stress. And, you know, 9 years ago, I was in my mid-40s or late 40s, and I was really struggling, and I was finding I had a lot of fatigue, a lot of lower back pain, chronic shoulder pain, brain fog. I couldn't figure out what was going on. I had always been very vigilant with my diet and exercise. I felt like I was doing everything right, and it wasn't working, it wasn't enough, and I couldn't work out why. What I discovered a year later was that my body was very compromised in its ability to produce this antioxidant called glutathione, the most important antioxidant in the body. And you'll see here, this was me, all of these were me, tired, run down, stressed, half asleep, dull, you know, aches and pains. I felt like, I remember saying to my chiropractor one day, I feel like I'm an 80-year-old woman when I wake up in the mornings and I try to get out of bed, and I've got this, I'm really stiff in the back and my shoulders really sore, and and he would give me some relief, but it didn't last for long because it wasn't actually addressing the root cause of what was going on. And that was that my symptoms were symptoms of low levels of glutathione. Glutathione for me was a massive missing link. I really did feel like I needed a massive tune-up. And when I put this slide up, a lot of people can relate to that. So it's something, glutathione's a word that's going to be, that we're going to be hearing a lot more about. With this modern age, we need to. So let's go back. Every single cell in the body needs to have 4 things. It must have oxygen, it must have water, it must have food, but every single cell in the body must also have glutathione. Without glutathione, the cell will die. With low levels of glutathione, the cell's going to struggle to function properly. So, there's a saying, our vitality is a reflection of our cellular health. So when you've got a lot of vitality, you've got great cellular health, you've got great levels of all of these 4 things, and glutathione is generally the one thing that most people are depleted in. Generally we have enough oxygen and water and food. Okay, I had very poor vitality 9 years ago. I have great vitality today because I have addressed this issue. Cell damage, what causes it? There's things out there called free radicals, which you've probably heard about, and we can't avoid free radicals. Our body produces free radicals just as part of our normal body's metabolism. We're exercising, we're eating, everything we do is producing free radicals, but we have this inbuilt antioxidant defense in our body from day one that's actually protecting us. But what a lot of people aren't aware of is we're all different in how well that inbuilt antioxidant defense is working. So some of us don't have it working very well at all, and we are much more prone to free radical damage, which causes oxidative stress, than others. So oxidative stress and free radicals cause cell damage, which over time causes inflammation, chronic inflammation, and over time that chronic inflammation is actually going to present as symptoms of chronic disease. So the term oxidative stress, which you might have heard, is an imbalance between our antioxidant defense and free radicals. And our antioxidant defense is made up of our inbuilt antioxidant defense as well as what we're taking in our diet to top it up with. And both are really important. And you look at these conditions here, they're all conditions caused by oxidative stress. And you look at these diseases, you all know people that have heart disease or maybe Parkinson's, Alzheimer's. My father had Alzheimer's. It's Karen's got her story. My story is I don't want to go down the same track as my father did. And one of the key things that we can do is actually prevent oxidative stress from happening in the body. So hence I take quite high amounts of antioxidants to actually protect myself, and the glutathione boosting products that I'll talk about shortly is a big part of that. But even things like diabetes, chronic fatigue, all of these things, they're all conditions of oxidative stress. Cancers, there's a reason, and these conditions actually they start from day one on the planet, or even in utero. Day one in utero, we are starting to create oxidative stress in our body. So our environment, and living in a clean environment, and avoiding a lot of these, avoiding free radical damage and avoiding oxidative stress is really important. So I said before, there's two types of antioxidant defense. There's that inbuilt antioxidant defense, which is the endogenous antioxidants, and then there's the exogenous antioxidants, which are, from our food sources, from the supplementation in the form of vitamins that we might be taking. And both are important. Both support each other. Our inbuilt antioxidant defense is the one that's protecting us from day one. And it's, the main inbuilt antioxidant enzymes are superoxide dismutase, coenzyme Q10, catalase, and glutathione. We look at all of these in the DNA report. And so often we see people are compromised in how well their body can produce these antioxidant enzymes. So we're the people that are really at risk sooner in life, because as soon as we're exposed to stress or environmental toxins, our body can't cope with that, and so oxidative stress will be occurring. Glutathione is the most powerful component of our antioxidant defense system. It's known as the master antioxidant, so it is the big one. All other antioxidants function better when they're present with high amounts of glutathione, because glutathione will allow other antioxidants to recycle. So as soon as you've got glutathione, or optimum levels of glutathione, you've got a significantly improved antioxidant defense. And even things like vitamin C and vitamin E, they're all going to work. You're going to get a far more effective, you're going to get far more effect from these antioxidants that you might be taking in supplement form or in your diet. You'll see there, glutathione is made up of 3 amino acids, glutamic acid, cysteine, and glycine. So it's the cysteine that's the really important part that we need to actually get into the cell and get through the gut. I'll talk about that in a minute. Main functions of glutathione. First and foremost, it's known as the master antioxidant. So your body's premier neutralizer of all types of free radicals. Vitamin C, vitamin E, they're selective to different types of free radicals, as are other antioxidants. Glutathione is non-selective. It will actually neutralize any free radical that's, that you're exposed to. So it's really important that you have high levels there, and then you've got your vitamin C's and maybe your vitamin E's and some of these other antioxidants. They can be doing their thing, and glutathione's out there working on the areas that these antioxidants don't work on. It's also known as the maestro of the immune system. It's an immune system enhancer. It protects and regulates immune cells. It's important for T cell metabolism. People that are prone to immune problems, and that can be autoimmune, it can be even being more prone to things like colds and flus and that sort of thing. If you've got boosted levels of glutathione, that's your best protection against getting the flu. I know the girls, we've talked about this before, none of us in the whole time we've been boosting our glutathione have we actually had a flu. Yes, we might get the odd cold. It generally is short-lived, and we don't usually even get those very often. So it's really important. Glutathione will help boost the immune system. It's your body's natural means of detoxifying heavy metals and toxins as well. So if you've got low levels of glutathione, you're going to be a lot more toxic. And that was me. I had very you know, I'm very compromised in my body's ability to produce glutathione, and as I was getting older, that was actually showing in me. So I had a lot of inflammation in my body. I was holding on to a lot of heavy metals and toxins, and that would have been in my brain. I had a lot of brain fog, but also in my body, in my tissues. I had a lot of inflammation there. So it allows you to clear heavy metals and toxins from the body if you've got high levels of glutathione. You know, benefits of glutathione, and pretty much all of these I have experienced. It increases your energy. Well, I found that increased my energy very quickly. It slows down the aging process. So, you know, it's oxidative stress is why we age. If we can slow down that aging process, or reduce our risk of oxidative stress happening, we're not going to age as quickly, and we're not going to get sick. We're not going to get that inflammation in our body that leads to chronic disease. So the key is to keep your glutathione levels high. Glutathione reduces muscle and joint discomfort. I had so many aches and pains. A couple of months later, I was jumping out of bed, ready to go for a run. I had this new lease on life. I didn't have the pain that I previously had. I didn't feel like I was 80. I felt more like I was, and I know people think this is a bit funny, but I felt more like I was in my 20s than in my 80s. But it's true. In fact, you know, sometimes I think I felt better than I even did in my 20s, because even in my 20s, I would find I couldn't party like my friends. I was the one that one late night and I was cactus for the rest of the week. So now I can have more late nights than one a week. And yeah, it's just giving my body what it needs. Glutathione, it strengthens the immune system. We've talked about that. Detoxifies the liver and cells, really important. Improves mental focus and clarity, improves quality of sleep. That was another area that improved significantly for me. You know, I was one of these people that was waking up at about 3 a.m. And couldn't go back to sleep. Well, quite very quickly, I started to sleep through the night. And I hear that a lot with people that start to boost their glutathione. Sometimes it's the first thing people notice is, well, I'm sleeping better. That's so important. Reduces the effects of stress. People cope better with day-to-day stresses. Improves the skin, the hair, the nails. Everything is so much healthier. And it improves athletic performance and recovery. And you know, I believe it's really important for athletes today to be boosting their glutathione levels to protect themselves against free radical damage, so that they are protecting their future, so that they actually have a life after they've been an athlete and aren't crippled with things like arthritis, or even, you know, even being, you know, coming down with things like cancers, motor neuron disease, heart attacks, all of these things. You know, it all starts with oxidative stress, and it's a build-up of that over time. So, but it does actually improve performance as well, because every single cell in the body is starting to function better. That's what's going to give you that extra, you know, 1% or part of that 1%, if you've got every cell functioning better in the body. And also if you can recover better, because glutathione is going to help clear lactic acid, and if you can recover better, that actually means you can back up your training better from day to day. Causes of glutathione depletion. You know, you look at all these things. We live in a modern environment, and we're surrounded by stress. People love to have a drink, and quite often love to have a drink so that it helps them cope with stress, or they might just like the taste of it. I certainly enjoy a nice glass of wine, but all of, you know, these things deplete our body of glutathione. If we don't have enough sleep, straight off we've got low levels of glutathione. Our cells are not functioning as well as they should be. You know, I've been doing a lot of traveling lately, going through airports and walking through those machines, and you're being buzzed by radiation. And now they're talking about 5G coming in. It's more important than ever before that we protect ourselves against the radiation in the environment, because we're exposing our bodies to it, and you know, it is causing oxidative damage to our body. drugs, medications, you know, they all lower your levels of glutathione. A poor diet, you know, when you're eating foods, very processed foods, your body's got to work harder to clear those toxic components of those processed foods from your body. So once again, they're depleting your body of glutathione because it's using it up really quickly. And as I said before, strenuous exercise, you know, some exercise will actually improve your body's glutathione levels, but as soon as you're starting to get into quite strenuous exercise or even endurance type exercise, you're actually depleting your body's levels of glutathione quite quickly. Smoking, illnesses, pollution, environmental toxins, all these things deplete your levels of glutathione. And you know, today, most of these things, a lot of these things we can't actually avoid. As we age, our glutathione levels diminish by 10 to 15% per decade. So that means our oxidative stress levels are starting to go up as we are getting older. So, you know, here, and I believe because I was genetically compromised, mine started earlier. You know, I started to really notice low levels of glutathione, not that I knew it at the time, but the symptoms of that in my 40s significantly. So, you know, it was like inflammation was setting in here, but it will have been starting way back, probably since day one on the planet, and it's a slow build-up of oxidative stress levels, and one day, hello, you've got chronic disease set in, and people present with different forms of chronic disease. So, you know, as we get older, it's another reason to boost our glutathione because we're losing some of that protection. There was a study done in 2012 by researchers at the Environmental Working Group in the US, and they tested the umbilical blood of 10 newborns for 413 pollutants just to see how toxic these newborns were from day one. And they found 287 chemicals in the umbilical blood of these newborns. And, you know, these chemicals are linked to brain and nervous system damage, birth defects, developmental delays, and cancers. So babies today are being born with a toxic load far greater than ever before. You know, pregnant women and their children today have 100 times more chemical exposure now than they did 50 years ago. So, you know, back when I was born, when Karen was born, you know, our world was a lot cleaner, and we weren't exposed to as many toxins, chemicals and things like that than what babies today are being exposed to.
And the adult rate of cancer was 1 in 25, whereas it is now 1 in 3, reportedly 1 in 2.
Yeah, and you know, back in the 70s, the autism rate was something like 1 in 10,000, and today they're saying it's about 1 in 38, 1 in 50, depending on where you live. And it's not that we're just picking up on it more so, and yes, we probably are picking up on it a little bit more so, but the environment is playing a huge factor here. Our genes have not changed, but our environment has changed, and these kids with a small surface area are being exposed to chemicals and, you know, environmental toxins so much sooner in their life, and their bodies can't cope with it. The 20th century saw the advent of more than 80,000 new chemicals, and it's not only these new chemicals, it's combinations of these new chemicals together, which is like new chemicals again. So we are living in the chemical age, and you know, we have to be aware of this, and it's so much more important than ever before to be protecting ourselves from these environmental toxins. Oral glutathione has been around for a long time, and it was what Karen was and Dave were taking when Dave was diagnosed with his pancreatic cancer, and they went to Mexico, and they said, get onto glutathione, his body needs glutathione. So they were taking this oral form of glutathione, which unfortunately they didn't realize then probably wasn't really getting through the gut. Most of it wasn't getting through the gut, and it definitely wouldn't have been getting into the cell. So, you know, we now realize that, that there's better forms of boosting glutathione, and taking a precursor to glutathione is is the most effective way to boost glutathione. Even intravenous glutathione, you know, it's extremely expensive, and it will boost glutathione in the bloodstream, but a lot of that is still not getting actually into the cell. Some of it will get into the cell, but a lot of it won't get into the cell. This gentleman here, Dr. Herbert Nagasawa, he spent 25 years researching glutathione. He actually wanted to come up with a way of protecting the liver. And his brother was a returned serviceman from the Vietnam War, and he was having liver problems because he was an alcoholic, and a lot of these returned veterans were alcoholics, and they were succumbing to cirrhosis of the liver, and you know, the liver's dying off. So he wanted to find a way that that would protect the liver for them. And it took him 25 years of research with a lot of other incredible scientists in the US, amongst quite a number of different universities. And they came up with this product called ribosine eventually, 25 years later. Like, this research took him a long time, but he didn't give up. He was determined that he would find something. He has a brilliant mind. Like, he's the man that came up with the cyanide antidote for the US government after September 11. He's published over 170 peer-reviewed articles. He was for 32 years senior editor of the Journal of Medicinal Chemistry. You know, and toxicology has been a really important focus of his career for a lot of it. So he came up with this compound called ribosine. It's D-ribose L-cysteine, and D-ribose actually protects the L-cysteine. It allows it to travel through the gut, and there's this little sulfur group that's attached to the L-cysteine, and that's the really important part that we need to get through the gut, because that's the really important part that's important in boosting and making glutathione inside the cell. So the D-ribose protects the L-cysteine. It travels through the gut. Once it gets inside the gut, once it's absorbed inside the cell, the D-ribose and the L-cysteine separate. D-ribose actually has a really important property of its own. It is the essential building block to making ATP, or energy. So we cannot make energy, we cannot make ATP unless we have enough D-ribose, and people fatigue if they don't manage to produce enough D-ribose. So we're giving the body more D-ribose, which is actually going to boost our energy levels in a natural way anyway. And the L-cysteine combines with these two other amino acids that are generally readily available in the body if you've got a reasonable diet, and forms glutathione. So we're getting, it's like we're getting this bonus effect from ribosine. Yes, it's helping create energy in the body, but it's also helping boost glutathione. And there's another precursor to glutathione that's very well known called N-acetylcysteine, or NAC. Ribosine has been put in a clinical study comparing N-acetylcysteine and ribosine was 300% or 3 times more effective at raising intracellular glutathione levels than NAC. It's also extremely safe, doesn't have the same side effects that NAC can have, and there's no toxic level being found with ribosine. I've used it, I've used it with a lot of children, especially on the autism spectrum, and it's extremely safe with them because the body only releases the cysteine that it needs. It's slow release on demand technology. Over in at Otago University in New Zealand, they've been doing some studies using ribosine. They became very interested in it. This was the initial study that was done there. It was a lipid study, and pretty much the study showed that ribosine boosts glutathione. It was a mouse study, it activates this glutathione peroxidase enzyme that protects against your lipids oxidizing, and that's really critical in helping prevent heart disease. It also decreases our LDLs and our lipoprotein little-a's via upregulation of the LDL receptors, which basically is how a statin works. And statins are these drugs that a lot of doctors use with people to help lower their cholesterol levels. Well, ribosine in a mouse study looks like it functions very much like a statin without the side effects of a statin. And it doesn't lower HDL, because we don't want our HDL to be lowered. So that's also very important to actually be able to maintain our HDL. So they went on to do another study. It was looking really promising, so they've gone on to do a human study, and we're waiting on the results of that human study to be published at the moment. So, but it's pretty exciting information, looking at these mice that had human lipid profiles. In the US, there was a wound healing study done, and many of us realised that our wounds heal quicker when we've boosted our glutathione levels. And these were rats that were incised, and you can see here this top one at 7 days. The wound is healing, but look at the difference between this one, this is one of the ones that was taking ribosine. So there's quite a significant difference here. So those are, that just shows the power of ribosine. One of the products that, and the product that I tend to use is Celgevity, because it's ribosine with some cofactors. So it's got extra vitamin C and some other antioxidants there that work synergistically with the glutathione that's being produced, which is produced from the ribosine, it's enhancing the antioxidant defense and enhancing the glutathione effectiveness. So it's helping protect our cells from damaging free radicals. It's helping support our health and function of the cell. So it's boosting our cellular health. It's TGA approved, it's banned substance control group approved, so athletes can take this product and they will not test positive for any banned substances. Just want to touch on, this is a couple of clients of mine the first one here was someone that was actually drinking, he's quite a heavy drinker, had a very stressful job, and his liver enzymes actually elevated. Over a 3-month period, we put him on a double dose of Celgevity to try and bring his liver enzymes down, and they did. They've come down quite significantly over this 3-month period. You'll see here. These two here normalized, this one significantly lowered. And this is actually quite significant, because recently I was sent a clinical study that was done by some doctors in El Salvador on fatty liver, and so non-alcoholic fatty liver, and it also had similar results. The scans, the ultrasound scans of the liver improved or normalized with some of them, and there was three people involved in the study, and 2 of them, they normalized completely. 1 of them significantly improved, and their liver enzymes normalized as well. So that's pretty exciting information, I think, and that was using Celgevity, and it was actually using it on quite a small dose, which is even more significant. It was only a half dose. Client B here, someone with arthritis, rheumatoid arthritis in both their knees, and had for 8 years actually had high inflammation markers, the CRP and the ESR. Within a month of taking Celgevity, once again, these markers had come right down. CRP had come down to 8, the ESR had come down to 11. So, that's significant when you see what they had been before. So that's just a couple of case studies of mine. What's happened here? Sorry. I'll just finish. This is my personal trainer, Josh Webb, and he trains elite athletes, elite motorsport athletes. He actually sends most of them to me to do their DNA, and most of them are taking the Celgevity and are actually finding that they notice quite a significant difference with taking it. He himself took it, and he took another product called Max ATP, which is like an energy drink that that enables you to perform better. Pretty much it enables you to create more energy and not fatigue. So he took both of these when he did Hawaii Ironman a few years ago, and noticed a massive difference. When he was training, he noticed a difference from day one of starting on these products. So he's a huge believer, looks after his athletes for their life, after their career. These are motorsport athletes. They're exposing themselves to a lot of fumes, as well as a lot of stress in what they're doing, and also a lot of travel. And travel, once again, creates free radical damage in the body, or makes them more prone to oxidative stress. So he's really hones in on that with them. So I'm going to finish there, and
we'll come back in.
Yeah.
And
if anyone's got questions,
you can have a drink of water.
Can I have it? Oh yeah, I haven't had one yet. Has anyone got any questions? Or I know